Hey everyone, today I want to talk about a book that's been around for a while, but I had never heard of it until a few weeks ago when Andrew told me if you like Dresden, you gotta read Alex Verus. And I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? When it comes to urban fantasy, Dresden has been more of the exception than the rule for me. So I figured, maybe, but I probably won't get around to it. And then he recommended it again. And I thought, he probably just finished the series, so it's the book that's on his mind right now. It's the flavor of the day. And then he mentioned it again, and again, and again. So after he recommended it to me at least 5 times in under a week, I decided to give in. I went on to Libby and I requested the first book, and I was thankful when I saw it was only 10 hours long. So not a huge commitment at all. So if you haven't figured it out by now, the book I'm talking about is Fated, Book 1 of the Alex Verus series. Now, I started listening to this book and immediately I was rolling my eyes and thinking, this guy's just ripping off Jim Butcher. Instead of a wizard in Chicago, you have a mage in London. Instead of having a private investigator's license and advertising in the phone book, he has a magic shop where he sells actual magical items. Like, all right, this is the same thing with a few tweaks. But then he got my attention when he mentioned that he's even heard rumors of a guy in Chicago advertising in the phone book is wizard, but it's probably just an urban legend. And that told me he's not hiding from the fact that this is going to be similar to Dresden. He's not acting like this is going to be an original idea and it's going to be all new. Instead, he's telling the reader he's going to take the same basic idea, but then he's going to make it his own, which that I can get behind. After all, how many great fantasy series are there that start off very similar to Lord of the Rings? You'd basically lose half of the genre if you got rid of all those books just because they started off too similar to Lord of the Rings. So I took a breath, shook off my initial thoughts, and decided to give this book a genuine opportunity. And boy, am I glad I did. From that moment on, I loved this book. Yes, there are plenty of similarities with Dresden. Besides the ones I already mentioned, they both had rotten childhood and teenage years, and they both managed to live in this small area of overlap where both the bad guys and the good guys really hate them. For two guys that just want to do the right thing, they managed to make a whole lot of enemies. But from there, he goes on to make this story his own. And a lot of the differences, I think, will make this series appeal to readers that didn't like Dresden. Specifically, readers that didn't like Dresden because of Dresden. So the first difference, the one that will make the biggest difference in my mind to those readers that didn't like Dresden, is there was not a single naked person in this book. And when he describes people, he doesn't describe them based on how hot they are. He even at one point goes on and says that you can't judge people based on their looks because some of the most evil beings in the world make themselves look beautiful. And conversely, some of the nicest beings in this world are absolutely hideous looking. He then goes on to greet a friend of his who looks like she belongs in a Stephen King novel. Another big difference is where Dresden is a young and powerful wizard that usually ends up blasting his way through often self-caused problems. Verus's power is all about information. You're not going to get a Fuego or a Frazari from Verus. Instead, he's going to think, plan, and strategize his way out of situations because he knows in a contest of brute strength, he's going to lose every time. You see, Verus can't cast any spells. He's a one-trick pony. Fortunately for him, his trick is pretty good. He's what's called a diviner. He can see into the future, but this isn't like someone taking ATM where they can see what's going to happen a few moments ahead of time. Instead, his ability is all about probabilities. For instance, if I was to drop a rubber ball, 100% of the paths would show that that ball is going to bounce back up. But if I was to drop a glass orb, maybe 50% of the paths show that that orb is going to chip and then roll away. Another 20% are going to show that the orb is going to completely shatter, and then 30% will show that the orb is going to bounce a little bit and manage to not get harmed at all. So he can see what's most likely to happen and what actions he needs to take in order to increase the odds of the outcome he wants actually happening. But he's not 100% certain on anything. He can't tell you what the lottery numbers are going to be tomorrow or anything like that. At first, this still seemed pretty overpowering, but there were several weaknesses pointed out throughout the book. For example, if someone truly doesn't know what decision they're going to make, then 50% of the futures are going to branch off in one direction, and 50% of the futures are going to branch off into another direction, providing absolutely no clue as to what's going to happen. Another simpler weakness is that it takes time to look down all of these paths, and he doesn't necessarily always have the time to find the one path out of a million that will lead to the outcome he wants. Not to mention, just like a person who looks out their window right before they get T-boned by another car, just because he can see what's going to happen or what's likely to happen doesn't mean he can always stop it. Alright, so what do I like about this book? I like that he has to use his brain to solve problems, yet the action scenes are still very well done. And because of the fact that he sees into the future, you get action scenes of him failing probably more often than you get the action scenes of him succeeding. I thought the book did a really good job of introducing us to the world, and I felt like I knew the characters very well for such a short book. And most importantly to me, the plot kept me guessing the entire time. I was never bored and it never got slow. The one critique I have is that it didn't quite pull me into the point where I could never put the book down. But that's not enough to keep me from rating this 5 stars. Overall, I rate this 84 out of 100, which easily jumps this into my top 10 for the year, right next to Age of War by Michael J. Sullivan. So this is a book I highly recommend, not just to fans of Dresden, but to people who didn't like Dresden because of Dresden. So that wraps up my review. If you've read both this and Dresden, let me know in the comments which series you prefer. And until next time, bye.